Chemical Kinetics, Part 5, Mechanisms. This video will help you determine if a proposed mechanism is valid for a chemical reaction. You will also develop an understanding of the connections between the molecularity of elementary steps, the rate-determining step, and the rate law for a chemical reaction. You'll even learn about intermediates. Most chemical reactions proceed through a series of elementary steps. These steps are called the mechanism for the reaction. One reason people study kinetics is to determine acceptable mechanisms for chemical reactions. Since we cannot directly observe the submicroscopic level of the atoms and molecules involved in a chemical reaction, it is impossible to prove a mechanism, but kinetics allows us to identify whether a particular mechanism is acceptable or not. In order for a reaction mechanism to be acceptable for a particular reaction, both of these two criteria must be met. The elementary steps of the mechanism must add up to the overall balanced equation for the reaction, and the experimentally determined rate law for the overall reaction must agree with the molecularity for the mechanism's rate-determining step. We'll get into what all that means in a moment. For now, let's look at this example. The reaction of nitrogen dioxide and carbon monoxide to form nitric oxide and carbon dioxide. Experimental evidence, perhaps from an integrated rate law plot or from using the initial rates method, supports that this reaction is second order with respect to nitrogen dioxide, as we see here in this rate law. The proposed mechanism for this reaction is two steps, shown here by these two equations and two sets of models to help you picture it. Notice that in the first step, nitrogen trioxide is formed. NO3 does not appear in the overall balanced reaction because it is used up in step 2 of this mechanism. This type of behavior is what typifies an intermediate. Intermediates are substances formed in one step of a mechanism, but used up later so that they don't appear at all in the overall reaction. So now we must ask ourselves if this proposed two-step mechanism is acceptable for this reaction. Do you remember the two criteria for assessing the validity of a mechanism? If you forgot, here they are again. Let's look at the first one first. The steps must add up to the overall reaction. In our example, if we add up the reactants on the left and the products on the right, canceling out any species that appear on both sides, we get the sum of the two steps. The sum of the two steps does match the overall balanced equation in our example. So that's good, but remember that isn't the only criteria for an acceptable mechanism. In order to fully accept a proposed mechanism, we must also look at the molecularity of its rate-determining step. The molecularity of a particular step is the number of species that must collide in order to produce the reaction indicated by that particular step. The molecularity determines the rate law for that step. For example, if a step has only one reactant, A, it is considered unimolecular and has a first-order rate law in A. If a step has two of the same reactant, A plus A, it is bimolecular and is second order with respect to A. Reactants A plus B is a bimolecular step, second order overall because it's first order with respect to A and first order with respect to B. The two examples shown here of termolecular steps are highly unlikely due to the low probability that a collision between three molecules at once could produce a reaction. In a mechanism, some steps are faster than others. The slowest step is called the rate-determining step or rate-limiting step, because the chemical reaction can proceed no faster than that step. As a result, the rate law for the rate-determining step must agree with the rate law for the overall reaction in order for the proposed mechanism to be valid. Here's an analogy to help you visualize this. If Mr. Luzio and Mr. Godar are cleaning up and washing lab equipment after the latest AP Chemistry lab, the process is only going to go as fast as the slowest person. Mr. Godar is super fast at drying the equipment and putting them away in the appropriate place, but Mr. Luzio takes forever at rinsing and scrubbing every crevice in each test tube and beaker he washes. The overall job of washing, drying, and putting away the lab equipment is only going to get done at the rate that Mr. Luzio is doing the washing. Mr. Godar is going to spend any extra time he gains from his fast work just waiting around for Mr. Luzio. So let's check our example and see if this mechanism passes our second test of validity. Other experimental data shows that the first step is really slow compared to the second step, kind of like the analogy of Mr. Luzio and Mr. Godar. The rate law for the first step, according to the bimolecular nature of the elementary step, is second order with respect to nitrogen dioxide. The rate law for the second step, which is also bimolecular, shows that it is first order with respect to nitrogen trioxide and first order with respect to carbon monoxide. Second order overall. This mechanism is an acceptable mechanism because not only did the elementary steps add up to the overall balanced equation, but the rate determining step's rate law, determined from its molecularity, matches the experimentally determined rate law for the overall reaction. This concludes our look at chemical reaction mechanisms with respect to kinetics. If you have any questions, please consult the appropriate pages in your textbook or leave a comment. Thanks again for watching this video. Talk to you next time.